Okay, another member of our board has arrived. A quorum being present, I'll call the meeting to order. First item on the agenda is to review and approve the minutes of our meeting of June 2nd.
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor of approving the agenda, at least our minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Our first item for consideration, please, Mr. Bronson.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, committee members. We have 4 items for your consideration this afternoon. Item 3A is an allocation of $105,000 in funds from the 2007 GO Bond Unlisted Street Funds to project PC-0469, Utility Relocations Agreement with Oklahoma Department of Transportation on I-235 in the area of the Northwest 50th Street and the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad bridges. As a preface to both this item and the next 2 items, these items are activities that we routinely participate with ODOT on. We are required to participate by state statute. On all 3 of these projects, we have been asked to contribute what they know at this point to be 50% of the cost of the utility relocations for each one of these 3 projects. So the first one here is I-235, or as we know it a little bit better, the Broadway extension from in the general area of I-235, Northwest 50th, and the Burlington Northern Railroad bridges. Those are both there in very close proximity. I didn't bring my pointer today, but the Northwest 50th Street Bridge is there at the top, and as you can see, kind of not quite perpendicular to that is the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad. If you've ever driven through there, you know it's very curvy, it's very tight in there, and this is the next phase that they've asked us to participate in, the utility relocations, which of course take place prior to the actual construction. Any questions?
Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve this item.
Move the item.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor of approving this item, sign of aye.
Aye.
Aye. The item is approved. Second item, please.
Item 3B, again, is an allocation of $25,000 from the 2007 GO Bonds Unlisted Street Funds to project PC-0470, again, utility relocations with the Oklahoma Department of Transportation. This time it's on I-235, on what they're calling the main line, which is the mile stretch between Northwest 36th and Northwest 50th. There you see, you have Northwest 36th there in yellow near the bottom of the aerial, and then again Northwest 50th at the top. It's for the utility relocations in this vicinity, and again, they've asked us to contribute what at this time they believe to be 50% of the cost. What we've done differently on these 3 items that you're being asked to consider today is, in the past, we would, for lack of a better term, get notification from ODOT and go to council, come to the Bond Advisory Committee, get approval for the funding, and then as the work progressed, we'd get another letter that says, oh, by the way, you owe us another $25,000, another $50,000, another $100,000. What we've done as some sort of a preemptive measure this time is to, when we get those letters, those initial notifications from ODOT, we respond back and say, we got your letter, but can you tell us at this time, do you foresee any additional costs that the city at some point in the future may be liable for, and it's these three projects that we're talking about today that we started that process on, and as far as they know, they've told us at this point, these are their best estimates. That's not to say that as the work progresses that they may not find some other utilities that we have to participate in the relocation, but we've started somewhat of a new process and just asking them to confirm their best knowledge as to what our costs are going to be.
I have a question. Are the utilities that are located, are those only city-owned utilities, or would they include other things like electric utilities? Or
They would include all the utilities, both city, ONG, OG&E, anything that's in there. And if you've been in public works as long as I have, very seldom do you start a project where you think you have all the utilities identified, and no sooner do you turn the first shovel of dirt that, wow, there's another gas line, or there's a AT&T line, or there's a Cox cable, something that was not identified in the plans. So that's why it's, again, these are initial estimates, but we've asked ODOT to confirm as best as they're able to say that these are what we think the costs are going to be.
Mr. Chairman, I also have a question. This is, I probably have heard this before, and it just never dawned on me, but you used the words they've asked us to, the city to. Can you speak to a little bit about the ideology of how that 50% and that ask, surely it's more formal, or?
Well, it's in state law. It's actually...
Okay, that answers the question.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
in Title 69 Oklahoma statutes. So, unfortunately, we don't have a choice. We have to participate.
I have another question.
Yes, sir.
Even if it's a unidentified line that maybe belongs to an oil company or whatever, we're required to move those as well?
Mm-hmm. That's true, isn't it? Yeah. When we're participating with the state, now if on, there's numerous street widening projects that are going on in the 2007 bond issue now. Undoubtedly, we find gas lines, transmission lines, and in those cases, it all depends whether or not they are in an easement that that particular utility already owns. And if that's the case, if they are in their own easement that they purchased 50 years ago, then it's our responsibility, because we're encroaching on their easement now by virtue of us doing our project. However, if they are just in the public right-of-way, if they're in the statutory right-of-way, then they have to move it at their expense. It all depends where the line is. Correct?
I think he knows something else.
So,
And also sometimes we have franchise agreements.
correct. And I don't even want to get into those. Those are,
Yeah.
I'll yield to.
Are there any other questions?
I move that we approve item 3B. Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor of approval of this item? Aye. The item is approved. We'll go to our...
This is just kind of a follow-up to the last two. This map, this aerial photograph, shows some of the phasing information that we've received from ODOT, and if anyone's interested, we'd be happy to provide you a copy of this, but this is something that we got that shows all the different phases of the new construction and the new alignments out there at I-235 in the vicinity. It goes all the way from 63rd Street down to Northwest 36th Street, so it's quite an intense project, but this is just some information that shows some of the phasing and some of the timing as to when they actually plan on undertaking that work. So, item 3C is an allocation of $211,000 in funds from the 2007 GeoBond unlisted street funds for project PC 0471, utility relocations agreement with ODOT. This time it's at I-240 eastbound to southbound I-35 at the Crossroads interchange. All we're talking about now is the section that would be in the lower left, where we all know when you're eastbound on I-240 and you want to head south on I-35, you've got the off-ramp there, and if you've ever been there at rush hour on an OU football game, even on the week, it gets extremely backed up. So this is the first phase of their work there, and again, they've asked us to participate to the tune of, what's our number here, $211,000, which again is our 50% share, as we know it to be today.
I move to approve item 3C.
We have a motion and a second to approve this item. All in favor? Aye. The item is approved.
Our final item is item 3D. It's an allocation of $85,000 in funds from 2007 GEO bond unlisted drainage funds to project DC 0284, channel repairs, 6400 block of Blue Stem West Road in Ward 8. This is just an aerial here of the area of some of the repairs. All of this is north of Hefner Road between MacArthur and Rockwell. It's a pretty major channel there that runs through the Blue Stem Addition, the newer part of the Blue Stem Addition. Here's some more work that we need to do. This is another aerial. This channel was originally constructed back with 1995 GEO bond issue funds towards the later part of the bond authorization. This work was actually finally accepted in 2005, and we've had some major, we've had 2 or 3 what we know to be 500-year flood events. This, from what I'm told by staff, the majority of this damage happened last fall, and we've got to get to it, repair it. As you can see, all the original erosion control is down in the middle of the creek. The banks are continuing to erode now because the erosion control is in the creek, so we've estimated about $85,000 to put that back the way it was. Unfortunately, it was completed in '05, and we only have a 2-year maintenance bond on it, so the maintenance bond expired in 2007, so now the city's on the hook to make those repairs.
When you say put it back like it was, there's no evaluation to say that we ought to do it better than it was before?
Well, in this case, this particular project, if, again, I don't want to date myself, but I've been in public works over 25 years, and it used to be every channel that we did, and I mean every channel, was concrete lined. We would put concrete on the slope walls, concrete in the bottom, as you see here. That type of work, for lack of a better term, is being somewhat discouraged now by the Corps of Engineers, and they are looking for us to do more eco-friendly type work, and this is one of the first projects that we tried that on. Now, to say that we're going to go back exactly the same, that's probably not accurate. We're probably going to do some slope modifications to help that erosion control stay in place. And as you can see in the lower right, the whole, I guess that would be probably the north bank there, has stayed in place. We're just experiencing it, and it looks to me, just to the naked eye, it looks like that the slope on the south is quite a bit more severe than the slope on the north, and that may have contributed to the erosion control coming out. So,
Any other questions concerning this item? Hearing none. I entertain a motion. We have a motion and a second to approve this item. All in favor? Aye. The item is approved.
thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bronson. As our agenda shows, there are several informational items to be presented by staff, and we can proceed.
closing out of the 89 and 95.
Yeah, okay. Each month, prior to coming to the Bond Advisory Committee, we have a meeting that's called the Bond Oversight Committee. And it's a rather large committee. It's made up of Mr. Couch, all three of the assistant city managers, the finance director, the municipal counselor's office, and representatives and department heads from any department that has projects in either previous or current bond programs. And over the last, maybe 6 or 8 months, Mr. Couch has really been asking staff to go ahead and work on expending the remaining funds from the 89, which there may have been just a couple $1,000s left in the 89, and then funds in the 1995 authorization. There were several $1,000s, but I don't think overall it exceeded what in the 95? $200,000. So over the last 8 months, staff has been working very diligently. My staff in all the other departments whose funds were still kind of hanging out there to be spent, and as of this time, we can announce that all of the funds that were left in the 89 and the 95 have been either expended on projects, or if we got down to a point where there was just a pittance left and we couldn't allocate it to a specific project, we allocated it to the debt service fund. So basically what's that means? That means that staff no longer has to account for, and the city no longer has to report annually on funds from these 2 previous bond programs. So those are done. We're working to reach that goal on the 2000, and of course we're still quite a ways away on the 2007, but at least now we can say that we don't have to account for or report on anything in the 89 or the 95 bond program at this point.
So moving forward, will there be a kind of a goal or a timetable, say for the 07, that there will be an attempt to kind of, so that doesn't drag on like 95?
Our goal with regard to the 07, and actually including some small parts of the 2000 that still have some project money in them, our goal annually is to encumber, either through contract awards, contract amendments, contract change orders, $70 million a year, okay? This past year that ended June 30th, we had $70.9 million of either encumbrances through contract awards, amendments, or change orders, and that is our goal. Right now, there's a report in your agenda that kind of lays out, and it's coming up on one of the next agenda items, that shows our project plan for fiscal year 14-15. And if you look all through the 3 pages of the report, you'll see at this time our number is about $74 million. We always try to estimate high, because if, for example, one street widening project that costs $5 million were to slip because of a utility issue, that would still allow us to hit that $70 million goal. It's that goal, and we are required by the IRS to expend 85% of the proceeds from any bond sale within 3 years' time.
Those are the listed funds that
Yes, yeah. So those are the 2 targets that we keep our eye on quite keenly. So.
Thank you, Paul. Continuing on with what Paul mentioned about our monthly oversight meeting with the city manager's office, we wanted to address the financial report for the month of June. Month of June, the actual contract awards was a little over $10.8 million, and year-to-date, as Mr. Bronson mentioned, is $70.9 million. There's some additional funds that were out for bid this past month, totaling $1.1 million that should award later this month or in August. GeoBond expenditures for the month of June was a little over $2.9 million, and year-to-date, slightly over $54.3 million. Our box 2 there kind of highlights the 85% expenditure requirement that Mr. Bronson mentioned. It's required by the IRS. Currently, our 2012 year sale is at 56%, which means we have an additional $14.4 million to expend by May of 2015. And you can also see the other numbers have been updated for the 2013 and 2014 sale. Next slide. This is our graph of the 2014 contract awards and expenditures. That top line represents the original target the Public Works had for reaching their goal of $70 million. The next line, which if you look at your screen in front of you, it's actually a red line, shows the progress throughout the year, in which you can see there at the end of June, they met their target, actually exceeding it slightly at $70.9 million. And then also the green line represents the actual expenditures for FY 2014, which was just over $54.3 million. With that, that's our financial report for June. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to address those.
I have a question. To achieve the spending and of those funds, those are for projects. How long in advance do you hire the engineering firms to do this before the actual work can begin? How do you do that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Eric Winger, Public Works Director. One of the tools that we use in Public Works to actually get the engineering advanced is the use of what we call the MFA, or the Municipal Facilities Authority Fund. There are some dollars that are designated to that. I think the current amount is about $7.5 million, and it goes for advanced engineering. So even before we're able to sell a bond, we will take bond projects and get the engineering underway so that when a bond sale occurs, like it just did a couple of months ago, we're ready to go into construction immediately. And then those funds that are sold reimburse the MFA, and then they're reused on the next set of projects. And so it's a revolving account. And so that's been set up, and that's been in use for some time, but that's our primary tool.
Well, we'll proceed. Who's next? With the next presentation.
Our next item is on the 2014-15 project schedule, which is attached. Mr. Bronson, did you have a few words you wanted to say about that handout as well?
As I said earlier, this is a process that we go through each year, starting probably late May. We look and see what's out there as far as what projects are there, where they are in the engineering process, where they are in the right-of-way acquisition process, and along about the middle of June, we come up with our final list of what we see is going to be our project awards for the coming fiscal year. As you can see here, as I mentioned earlier, right now our goal, if everything were to come in exactly as it is on this report for the exact amounts, we would be at $74.7 million at this time next June. There's a lot of fluctuation. Project managers meet every Monday morning at 8:30 a.m. and we go through the whole report. Management is kept apprised of what projects are having issues as far as right-of-way, utilities, consultants that may not be turning in their final plans on time. So we have a weekly meeting, and the projects move sometime from month to month, to accommodate varying schedules, utility issues, etc. But this is a report that was presented to the Bond Oversight Committee and approved a couple weeks ago, and now we're presenting it to you just as a reference as to what we have on the horizon for the next 12-month period.
Any questions concerning this item?
I just have a general question. When it comes to creating a schedule, is there any consideration at all for which wards would need the immediate work first, or is it just balanced across the board? Or
We try our best to balance things. There's sometimes it's not that easy. There's certain parts of the city have for example, right now, there's the vast majority of the street widening work is taking place in northwest Oklahoma City. That's not to say that there's not street widenings going on in other parts of the city, but again, I've been here a long time. Back in the 89 bond issue and the 95, the vast majority of the street widening projects were taking place in South Oklahoma City. So we base what projects are put in the bond program by traffic count, by development activity, that type of thing. But we try to do our best to at least each year spread the projects out as much through all categories of the bond program: streets, traffic control, storm drainage, parks, fire, police, libraries, the whole gamut of the projects. We try to do our best to spread that out so everybody in each ward gets some benefit each year. Okay.
Our next informational item is presentations of the 5-year capital improvement plan. State law requires that the city adopts a formal 5-year capital improvement plan every 2 years. And so this is our update year. The departments have been working very hard over the last probably 9 to 10 months putting together their plans. And today I've asked Public Works Department and the Parks Department to give presentations on theirs. And their primary funding source is the bond program, so we've chosen them to present to you. And with that, I'll turn it over to Eric Winger, the Public Works Director.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to come speak to you today and to kind of show you this 5-year plan for Public Works. This is from 2015 to 2019. I know we've got some new board members to kind of give you a little bit of bearing about Public Works. We operate with almost 400 staff. Our annual budget this year is actually about $46 million in operating. It's $58 million total when you look at some of the capital that's been added to our budget. We make up about 6 different divisions. We have engineering, we have traffic engineering, we have street traffic drainage maintenance. We also do inspections in the right-of-way. We have stormwater quality, and then we have the river. You're going to see a number of those projects. You're going to kind of see how each of those different divisions interacts. This is the capital plan by fiscal year. So you can see the breakdown from starting this upcoming year, 2014-2015, all the way through 2018-2019 for a grand total of $365 million. As previously mentioned, and we look at the different breakdown, you're going to see the majority of the work that is put into our plan is actually in streets. You're going to see that total at $237 million. That's the dark blue area of this graph. When you look at also facilities, it's significant. You're going to see that in the upper left-hand corner, that's kind of in the green or the green-blue color. That's at $79 million, and when you combine traffic, drainage, and bridges, it amounts to about 11% of that total. This is work by funding source, and also as mentioned in the meeting a little bit earlier, the majority of the funds do come from bond issues, and in this case, the 2007 GO bond accounts for nearly 75% of the total revenue that goes towards these projects. Now, we've broken down the other funding sources that you'll find on the right. The next most significant outside of the bond issue is the CIP, and it's about $30 million or about 8%. Different types of projects: street widening, resurfacing, intersection traffic control, streetscapes, drainage, bridges, and also facilities. And I'll kind of cover some examples of those in this PowerPoint. On the street widening and resurfacing projects, this is a map of those projects that are included in the 2007 bond issue. Now, these are not the only street projects. I'm going to show you a couple other maps and a few of those other funding sources that we use, but you're going to see is there's a lot of expansion in northwest Oklahoma City. You're going to see some things central, but you're going to see that there's actually work pretty much in all areas of the city, and that was all planned as a part of the 2007. Examples of some of those: this is Eastern Avenue. This is a widening project that was a 2-lane to a 4-lane. This is Interstate 240 south to the city limits. Now, this is complete. It was also federally funded, and it was a cost about $5.7 million. But as we continue to see traffic counts increase on streets in Oklahoma City, trying to make advances on getting ahead of that and widening those streets before they become traffic congestion issues. This is another project on Portland Avenue from Southwest 74th to Southwest 104th, and so this is just going to be east of the Will Rogers World Airport. It's under construction, as you can see in this photo. The work is continuing. The south portion is getting ready to open soon, but work is going to proceed through the next year. This next map is our resurfacing work, and you're going to see that it's broken down by year. Everything that is in green is work that was done in 2011, blue, 2012, red, and 2013. Everything that you kind of see as a red crosshatch, that's actually general fund residential resurfacing projects that were done in 13. You might remember these funds. This was $1 million per ward that was allocated by the City Council that allowed projects, not bond projects, to actually be affected. And so there's obviously a need before we wait for the next bond issue, and this is the amount of work that was actually completed with about $8 million. Here's an example of some of those. This is Northwest 13th Street completed. Then there was a lot of neighborhood resurfacing, which included Northwest 16th, and this one also on Hudson. The next category of work that is also included in our CIP is the intersection and traffic control projects. And one of the biggest projects, in the single project really in the 2007, is the ITS, the Intelligent Traffic System. And this is a map of the different corridors. There's actually 18 different corridors that are included here, with the goal of replacing all of the traffic controllers at every intersection in Oklahoma City, and that accounts for 750 different intersections. It was for several reasons. We were actually able to reduce travel time, helps actually reduce emissions, lower gas consumption, but it also helped us update antiquated equipment. And so we're nearly complete with this project. It'll actually finish in 2015. And as I mentioned, the corridors, we'll look at this next slide. This is what the inside of those cabinets look like. So obviously modernizing the hardware and the software that goes into those cabinets. The other benefit of this is that it's actually provided wireless connectivity where we actually can access those cabinets from downtown Oklahoma City. So what used to be an effort where we would have to go out and do maintenance on a cabinet in the field, that still occurs, but we're actually able to get some data and some information remotely. We can also send to the cabinets new control codes and things to program some of the signaling. Let's go back one slide real quick. One of the studies that we completed was actually on Classen Boulevard, and one of the goals was to reduce the time, or actually improve the time by 5%, the commuter time. When we actually finished that corridor, we improved it actually by 6%. We shaved actually seconds a day off of a commute where it actually amounted to hours a year. So if you're a commuter that uses Classen Boulevard, there's been a significant savings in time just from that corridor being completed. One of the negatives that we are starting to see, though, is that when we actually signalize and we coordinate intersections, it does cause some delay on the side streets. It's probably been one of our new complaints this year, is that they're waiting, our vehicles are waiting too long on a side street waiting for their light to turn green. Sometimes they don't see cars coming, but what's happening, again, is it's a coordinated signal approach. It usually only happens in the AM or the PM rush. It's not really an all-day type of thing, but that is something that we're working towards seeing if we can make some additional improvements. This is some of the other intersection and traffic control projects. This is Northwest 164th in Pennsylvania, a significant project that was about $3 million. Mostly signals, but it did include also some left-hand turn improvements and then a significant amount of utility relocations. Another category of work that we complete is streetscapes, and probably one that's the most well-known is Project 180. Obviously, a lot of work in the downtown area. $180 million, 180 degrees, covering just about 180 acres of downtown. You'll see a map on the right. Everything that's in blue is completed work to kind of give you a little bit of bearing. On the bottom center, that's the Myriad Botanical Gardens. If you look at the just left of the two green areas, you've got City Hall and the Bicentennial Park, which is just across the street from us today. We've got North Robinson Avenue under construction, which you're going to see with kind of the black cross-hatching. But you'll see that we have a few additional packages. Package 6, 1 through 5 is complete, 6 is under construction, and we've yet to bid package 7. And that's identified in the brown and the red. But again, those are projects that will be completed over the next couple of years. This is a before and after of Sheridan Avenue, and I think a lot of the things that you see is obviously enhanced streetscapes where we've narrowed the lanes to 11 feet. We've increased the pedestrian access and amenity zones. You're going to see lots of new landscaping, new signal poles, new lights, It's really a complete downtown makeover. This is what it looks like during construction. And we've made some changes in this latest phase. We're actually constructing more of a block-by-block approach instead of removing 7 or 8 blocks at a time. But you'll see that the work is very concentrated. A lot of work behind those orange and white barrier walls if you've taken a walk downtown. But soon after those are completed, those new intersections, those new road segments are opened, and we move on to the next one. Drainage projects. This is 2007 drainage projects, and you'll see that it's somewhat limited. In 2007, there weren't the number of projects that were starting to amass with drainage concerns. So one of our focuses in the next bond issue is probably going to be an increase in the number of drainage projects that you'll see. You're going to see a lot of work that was along the Oklahoma River, but you're going to see some of the other outlying areas receiving a few of these projects. At Northwest 51st and Hemingway, this is going to be by the Penn Square Mall. There was a significant amount of improvements that were done by the Public Works Department. You'll see some new pipe and some new wall repairs. This is one of those concrete line channels, a little bit different than the one that you saw earlier in the meeting at Blue Stem, but this whole section of wall was in need of repair and replacement, and that work is complete. Moving on to our bridge projects. This identified with the red triangles are all the bridge projects that are included in the 2007 bond issue, and again, you'll see that they're spread across the city. At Douglas Boulevard Bridge, this was a bridge where the embankments were eroding very, very quickly. You can see that in the photo on the left. You can see some of the exposure of some of the primary supports. You'll then see on the right-hand side the completion of that work, and this was at Southeast 149th and Douglas, at a cost of about $55,000. We also do pedestrian-type bridges, and here's one in Quail Creek area. You can again see the piers and the bridge supports being exposed, and again, these come from some of the real historical rains that we've had in the last year or two, just eroding away those banks. And you'll see the new bank protection in that area with the use of a lot of the riprap. Moving on to our last category of work in our building projects, Public Works also not only does roads, bridges, and drainage projects, but we do significant building projects as well. In the 2007, there's a lot of police, fire, and library work, and those are identified on this map. You'll see the red is the fire, the police is in a gold color, and then there's some city facilities in green. There's the new police headquarters. It's under construction at 700 West Colcord, and that work's underway. And these are the renderings for what that will look like here in the next year. It's to be completed in the fall of 2015. This is some of the construction photos of the work underway. You can see some of the major structural elements are now in place, and they're starting to put in the new flooring systems. This is a new fire station that was opened up just recently on Southwest 119th and Rockwell Avenue. It will be the newest in the city. It's $2.5 million. It was completed by Pillar Contracting. This is some of the interiors. You can see some of their weight facilities, and of course you'll see the equipment and where the fire engines are stored. Some significant design changes in a modern fire station over maybe one that we might be familiar with. There aren't poles anymore. There's usually not a second story. I think if you ever have an opportunity to visit one of these newer fire stations, they're very, very much more of a home-style feel. Obviously, the firefighters that are stationed at those, they work in different shifts, and so there's just a modern amenity set that goes into a new fire station construction. And then this is the Lincoln Park Clubhouse, and this construction is also underway. It's expected to finish up this summer. You can see the rendering on the left and the work in progress on the right. It's going to be a multi-use facility, not just as a golf and pro shop, but it's also going to have opportunities for community events as well. So it has a ballroom that can be rented and leased, and so there's some tremendous opportunity with this new project as well. We do some smaller projects, and although Public Works under the MAPS program initially was assisting in the Cox Convention Center, there are smaller projects just like flooring replacements, and so this is the carpet replacement inside the Cox that was actually completed this year as well. It's a cost just under $1 million to replace the carpet facilities there. So that'll complete the presentation I have for you on Public Works. I think there were a number of questions today about the next bond and how we plan. We obviously manage projects, and we come up with lists of projects that are in need. So we will look at those very, very closely. But again, that'll be a council policy decision on when and how much, and some things that we'll hopefully have some more information in the future. So right now the target is set at about 2017 for that to occur. So as we get closer to that date, we'll obviously be able to provide you some additional updates on that one. So with that, I can answer any questions that you might have.
Yes, I see that the street department has crews that are now doing resurfacing. That is something that I had not seen in many years. Will that continue? And is that a savings over having contractors do it?
You know, street resurfacing comes in a variety of forms, and I think there are some new technologies that are out that might look like resurfacing, but they're actually advanced maintenance. And so one of the projects that Public Works provides is what we call microsurfacing. Our goal is to do about 80 miles of microsurfacing a year. When it's finished, it looks like a street has been resurfaced, but it actually puts a very, very thin layer of an asphalt-type material on the surface of the existing street. So it doesn't involve any milling, and it only can be performed on a relatively good condition street. So if it's one that is completely gone, we're not able to do that type of work. But we do have a machine that takes care of that. We're actually in the middle of microsurfacing season, so if you see a large gold rig that's out on a street in your neighborhood that's laying down that material, it is advanced maintenance. We do have a surfacing machine that can do a section or a piece of street at a time. It's not the intent that we'd go out and be able to resurface miles and miles of work. That would be work that we would actually contract out to our local contracting community. We're really not staffed to do major resurfacing projects, but between potholes, crack sealing, microsurfacing, and then what we'll call some of that advanced maintenance like base repair, we do all of those functions in Oklahoma City, and that will continue. Yes.
Chairman Eric, can you tell me a little bit about the impact of some of the MAP projects downtown, like the streetcar, park, although it's not MAP, but American Boulevard, on some of the streets that have been completed under 180? What effect does some of these MAP projects have on those completed projects?
So one of the things is, as we track our street quality, which as we do a citizen survey every summer, the number one comment that comes back is the quality of Oklahoma City streets, and our council has really prioritized work in that area. Project 180 has actually helped improve the quality of city streets immensely. So as we look at the quality of a street, they're ranked with a numbering scale called a PCI, Pavement Control Index number, and it's a scale of 0 to 100. 0 being it's basically dirt, and 100 it's a brand new street. We're currently running about a 62 if we were to average all of our streets. It's not a bad number, but it's one that we hope to improve on, and one that I can tell you that's improved over the last 3 years. So we seem to be gaining about a percentage each year. We started at a 60 about 3 years ago. We're up to a 62. And I think with the number of projects that you see becoming before your board and the things that you're planning or we're planning to do in the future, that number is just going to increase. So obviously the quality of city streets is something that through either projects like Project 180, through the bond issue resurfacing, through the widening, all those have a good effect on Oklahoma City and helping improve that for our citizens.
But specifically, again, with some of the streets that have been completed in the downtown area, that have been completed, improved, as you say, PCI, are there any streets, are they going to be torn up again, is what I'm getting at, when we look at issues like the streetcar, or for that matter, the park?
So for the park, start with that one first. The park really is going to necessitate some probably street improvements around the park once it's complete. The bond issue does have some funds. We're also looking at some other available funds to make that work happen when the park is finished. And that's pretty common. I will tell you, whether it's a public development like a public park or it's a private development, we work closely with developers to make sure that we can improve that street once their work is done. When we talk about the streetcar, it's a little bit different scenario. Project 180 was designed so that street panels could be removed without tearing out the entire street. So if you look on South Walker today, you're going to look at the work that's being done by OG&E to service the new downtown elementary school. They've removed only panels of concrete, but they really have not had to modify the curves to the other existing lanes. And with that design, it allows a limited demolition to occur and allows them to be put back fairly quickly once that new infrastructure is in place. That's going to happen with the streetcar. So when the streetcar route and the construction proceed, panels of concrete of the existing streets, if done by 180, will be removed and replaced, but only a panel at a time. But then there may be some of those other areas of outlying downtown or possibly into Bricktown where that streetcar would go that we would have to then do some saw cutting and some things of those existing streets and make those repairs because they weren't 180 to begin with. But we are pretty advanced with the removal. Obviously, saw cutting and removing squares of street and replacing complete lanes and things like that will be performed. And so again, I would say that some advanced planning is going to help make that possible to make a limited amount of demolition, but there will be some demolition.
Another unrelated to that, with the new technology, I'm intrigued by the traffic signals and the deputy getting Plaza Boulevard and how that can be handled, downtown or one central area in terms of coordination. Do you see anything like that going on in terms of, as we hopefully increase access to public transportation, the bus across the city, even though that may be incremental and happening, away, and hopefully again, as we make bus shelters more available and better bus shelters in terms of sheltering folks, do you see a coordination in terms of, I'm sitting at a bus stop, there's a digital thing that tells me what time the next bus is supposed to arrive, for example. Is that kind of technology, you guys thought about that or
Yes, so Metric Transit is already working on that, and I believe they may have some pilot projects already in place. And so, yes, that technology exists and is on the way. I think it's also a technology that's going to be expanded to the streetcar once it goes in as well. So some sort of predictive timing so that we know when the next streetcar or bus or public transportation system arrives. I think that's already in the works.
So for buses as well, I mean, for streetcar, you would expect people, because of the shortness of the route, perhaps not waiting as long. But, you might wait a little bit longer as we don't have the kind of scheduling and number of buses and what have you, that it's inevitable that some places have to wait longer than others for buses. So you see, that's in the works.
Yeah, clearly the majority of the stops don't have that function now, but I think there is the plan to improve bus stops and bus shelters and that technology in the future. Yeah.
Okay, is there any more items like parks and recreation? Is that going to be discussed here?
Yes.
Okay. There's another
And,
presentation.
thanks, Mr. Winger. And now we'll turn it over to the city's new Parks Director, Doug Cupper, to present the 5-year plan for Parks and Recreation.
Good afternoon, Chairman, Bond Committee. Doug Cupper, Director of Parks and Recreation. Try to stumble through this, being my first opportunity to address you all. The Parks capital plan for the next 5 years is a total of $125.7 million, broken up over the increment years. You can see before you that we have it mapped out to the year 2018-19 for a total of $64.3 million. The summary of the projects going forward: park improvements, general park improvements, $25.5 million, facility improvements, $88.6 million, and then $11.6 for pathways and trails. I'll start with the latter first. The park master plan that was just recently completed, the citizens showed that there is a higher need for healthier lifestyles in our parks, and that means additional paved walkways, pathways, and trail systems through our system. We have over 150 parks that we're now trying to accommodate this type of mentality, this type of planning, this type of thinking going forward. The pictured here is the Will Rogers Gardens with simple walking paths through the gardens, but also additional trail system through the Arboretum that is part of Will Rogers Park. The total projects by type, facility improvements will be about 70%, park improvements will be 20%, and then the paving and walkways down to around 9%. Again, the pathways go a long ways in our smaller parks just by getting the neighborhoods out to be able to enjoy the green space that we have already created in older sections of the city. Projects by funding, you'll see the unfunded is the lion's share of that. Almost 60% of the project is unfunded. We have a little slice of it, 0.8% for golf. This is a simple reallocation or purchasing of some carts for our Jimmy Stewart golf course. Municipal Facilities Authority is less than 1% at a 0.31. Some of that activity is just trying to get out ahead of the program on getting some replacements in place for Will Rogers and some of our tennis courts. We also have quite an intensive opportunity to hit up private funding, trying to get some matching funds going to try to do some improvements that the taxpayers won't be involved with. But then again, we also have some MAPS fundings involved in this as well. Unfunded projects, the Civic Center, a major plan was done in conjunction with the Civic nonprofit branch, trying to continue the improvements that were started years ago when we rehabbed the main hall. We have additional rental space within the Civic Center that could become more available if we did some rehab of those facilities, additional theater space, brought into ADA compliancy. There's some space on the 5th floor in the Civic Center that could be renovated, again, making it more usable, more rental friendly. Some pre-function space, both from a restaurant perspective. We also would like to look at some rooftop amenities at the Civic Center that could be rented to generate additional non-traditional performance income for that facility and for the Public Facilities Trust. We also would like to look at multi-generational recreation centers. The new wave that is coming down the pike is, we've traditionally had recreation centers for the little kids. But as we look at our young professionals and what they need in recreational space, let alone people of my age that are the baby boomers needing something more non-traditional than, the old domino or a bridge set. They want climbing walls. They want additional resources available to the older set. So a multi-generational area that could be used in the summertime by the kids for summer activities, but used year-round by the young professionals and the baby boomers that need additional resources as well. And then, of course, smaller projects going forward to the tune of about $71 million of unfunded projects that we feel are necessary to plan for the next 20 years in the recreation business. Some of the park improvements that are underway at this time, I forgot to go by funding source. Some of the park improvements that are underway right now, Woodson Park, one of the cornerstones of the Grand Boulevard loop that our forefathers planned for the city, needed to be renovated. We have a higher need for competition athletic facilities throughout the city, but we started with Woodson Park. Traditional soccer play. This is a facility that will be one of our competitive tournament facilities that we hope to be able to draw from not only Tulsa area and places like that, but as far north as Kansas and as far south as Texas, trying to draw some of that tournament play into our community so that we can get some heads in beds as well as restaurant taxes, things along those lines, generating economic boom for this section of the city going forward. The project was a $6.5 million project. We hope to hit the fall league season. This facility has been planned into our recreation division to be expanded. We will do the program planning out here. We will be offering the leagues in this area going forward to try to bolster the playability of this section of the city. New pathways and picnic shelters at Bluff Creek. Again, these are indicators of some of the smaller projects. This was a $350,000 improvement to Bluff Creek. We think that it will also generate some additional revenues into the general fund. Again, trying to expand the usability of a park that is used, but non-traditional type of activities by putting the picnic shelters in here. Next one is Kitchen Lake. We had the dedication of this particular park amenities back in June. This is a 10-acre site of about a quarter section that we hope to expand upon going forward. Again, this is kind of a mid-range development, parking lot, the entry drive in the parking lot, and then a ADA-compliant walkway down to an ADA-compliant fishing pier. The project cost on this one was approximately $720,000. Then we saw in the pie chart that we are trying to gather as much outside revenues into the capital improvement project, again, expanding the CIP dollars, the tax, capitalizing on the taxpayer dollars. This is in conjunction with Sandbridge Energy. The whole project is approximately $4 million. The city's portion is 1.5. Again, seeking out and capitalizing on these private-public partnerships for improvement to our park system. Memorial Park is one of the larger projects that we've done. It's all-in from the public sector would be about $2.1 million. But this, again, is one of our older parks. This is a traditional park that we are trying to bring back to the glory of the historic roots that was in this park originally. You have the historic fountain on the west side of the park along Clausen Street. You have a promenade, if you will, overlooking the fountain. The center, we have put a walking path around a traditional soccer complex in this park, again, trying to bring it back to its glory. But along with the historical elements within this park, we are trying some brand new technology. The parking lot on the north side of the park has been built with pavers that allow the water to penetrate rather than run off. This water goes into a filtration system, rain gardens, if you will, multiple tier rain gardens that will take the impurities out of this parking lot and out of the neighborhood runoff and purify it and make it a better product that goes then into the stormwater system that may not percolate into the soils there. At least the water leaving Memorial Park will be better quality than what might have come into the park going forward. So we're real intrigued with bringing this type of technology into our park system. We're hoping that it is a success and we can use it elsewhere in the system. Some of the facility improvements that have been completed is the conservatory out at Will Rogers Gardens. This was a facility that was in dire need of major renovations. Again, working with the historic preservation folks, this 1920s vintage greenhouse was renovated and reincorporated into the city system. The park has seen a boom of rental activity at this location. It is a great place to have a special event going forward, and we think we can capitalize again on some non-traditional use of this conservatory going forward, again generating some income for the general fund, kind of a cost recovery, if you will, for the investment that has been done there. We have multiple family aquatic centers, and in the 2007 bond issuance were improvements to the Earlywine Family Aquatic Center. We hope to add some additional elements to this very heavily used facility, but we also want to make sure that we are maintaining this facility at a high level so that we don't end up with things falling down around our ears. So we will be looking at that, and again, we will be working with our building services people as well as the public works folks to make sure that we check every element in this park before we add elements to this facility. Again, the community center, some of our centers are fairly old. As I stated earlier, we want to look at expanding the system with new multi-generational, but those facilities that we are currently operating in. We want to make sure they look fresh, they look clean, that we make sure that we are providing opportunities to our user groups as well as the neighborhoods that surround these recreation facilities. So we will be looking at probably converting from the traditional arts and craft type of rec center to a more multi-use type of facilities, including additional opportunities for fitness centers within the older traditional recreation centers. Eric kind of stole my thunder on the Lincoln Golf Course, but I know for a fact that we will be generating large non-traditional income off of this new Lincoln Clubhouse. Previous facility that I operated generated as much as $150,000 non-golf related rentals of that space. So I'm looking forward to this facility opening and working towards creating some non-traditional golf income for the golf trust and under the public properties trust. Again, getting back to what the public wanted when we did our master plan that was just recently accepted by the City Council, walkways and pathways of multiple kinds. We are looking at some major bicycle linkages through our park system, but we are also looking at just passive pathways. Case in point, the next slide will show the Arboretum at Will Rogers, just being able to stroll through a park like the Will Rogers facility. Again, from a non-traditional Parks and Rec perspective, I think that the Oklahoma City Parks and Recreation System is probably the largest health and wellness provider in this community. As long as we can continue to put in pathways and walkways within our parks, we can get the public out walking, we can get them out strolling through the green spaces in their neighborhoods. Again, it's a mental health activity, it's a physical health activity, and it's proven that any child that gets out into the green outdoors, even if they are suffering from some of the ADH syndromes, they will be better served going home or back into schools and things along those lines. So we are going to be improving our pathways and our accessibility to those pathways by creating new parking lots at trailheads and making them more accessible, more user-friendly. And with that, not only to this park department, thank you for the opportunity to present to you, but the children of our community, thank you for allowing us to continue to improve our system with accessibility fishing areas as well as pathways and facilities. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
The only question I have is, where is Woodson Park?
Woodson Park is down on the south side. It's kind of split by the highway. You got Woodson East and Woodson West. It's down at 29th Street South and the interstate. It's kind of split by Highway 44.
You mentioned bike trails. Do you deal with bike trails throughout the city?
In certain regards, yes, we are responsible for keeping them clean and keeping them free of debris and picking up after the 4th of July celebrations and things along those lines. But we're also talking about connectors from neighborhoods to the major bike paths with our planning systems.
And how do you get new planning into that?
New planning?
Yes, like I live in a neighborhood that's just west of Lake Etna. I would assume Lake Etna is in your pipe
Yes, sir.
plan, our neighborhood, and actually a coalition of about 8 neighborhoods would love to be connected into that plan because we're right on the edge of the lake.
Well, we do. We do have a Trails Commission that looks at that and takes those suggestions from neighborhood. So we do have a Pathways and Trails Commission that helps us do those long-range planning. We also work with the planning department as well as the transportation folks and everybody else to make sure that we're all on the same page, because we're not just recreation-oriented, we're also alternative transportation-oriented, so we want to make sure that we are planning for the future so that people can get to work as well as recreate.
Do you interface with Public Works on roads that are going into the parks?
Yes, sir. We work with Eric's folks on planning of our pathways so that so if there is, like right now, MAPS 3 is building some additional bicycle pathways, so we're looking at those alignments and see where our parks are along those alignments or short distances from those long systems that MAP 3s, so we can plan for those eventualities. But we also work with neighborhoods for their small parkways, just to get walkways in there as well. Yes, sir.
Several of the parks have walking trails, and since Oklahoma City is still largely populated with shift people, is there a long-range plan to make sure that there's lighted walking trails so that people maybe that, they need to, at different times, I mean, do we have several lighted walking trails?
We do have, of course, we try to take that in consideration in the neighborhood parks so that shift people, when they get home, they can decompress like the 8 to 5 folks get an opportunity to decompress. But also in the longer bicycle paths that are used for alternative transportation, we do look at lighting for those areas as well so that we can make sure that we cover all of the gambits that our citizens need, not only from an alternative transportation, but a quality of life as well.
I just want to say welcome to Oklahoma City. It certainly looks like you really kind of got your feet wet. Wichita's lost, Wichita's lost is our game.
Well, I love Oklahoma City, and I love the fact that everybody's on the same page and working towards the end goal, and that's improving the quality of life for everybody in the community. It's just a great place to be. Thank you.
Thanks, Doug.
Okay. The presentations are concluded. Our next item is there any new business to come before our committee? Are there any items from committee members?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Our legal mind here. Let's just take item D, and I'm from Ward 8. What would happen if the committee did not approve it?
What was item D?
I'm just using that, and he's not here to defend him, John's not here, but I just picked that out as an example. I mean, I know we come here and we approve these things and everything, and I've yet to see one not approved. And so what the question is, what happens if we don't approve it?
I'll make a comment and then Amy can add to it. With the Bond Advisory Committee being a recommending body, the way these items move through the process is they'll go to council next, then it will say either it was recommended for approval, or if we denied it, it would say the committee recommended for denial.
So in other words, the council can do whatever they want. If we don't approve it, say, well, the heck with them, we want to do it, so they go on and do it. Okay, I just want to make sure that's what I thought it was.
Let's hope that the affected council person would be adamant in supporting this committee and the person who recommended that it be denied. I'm not hopeful, but I would think that ought to happen. Okay. Are there citizens to be heard? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
The motion is before us. All in favor? Aye. We are adjourned.